Once you've removed all the 8 screws, make sure you keep them safe. Thing about these things being made in America is they're probably some funky American thread. They're not actually metric, so if you lose the screws and you need to replace them, quite possibly your only option is to scrap another tracker and use the screws. Keep them in one safe place. Having removed the screws, we should now be able to access the power supply. Now, in this case, the main cover slides away from the power supply itself. The way they've made this is slightly awkward. There is a power connector on the board here which needs to be disconnected on one end, and at the other end of the power supply unit there is the mains input connector, which again needs to be removed. In this case, the power supply comes off along with the back plate. Once you've taken the cover off, all the internal connectors remain inside the cover. So you've got the power connector, the on-off switch, the power LED, and also the data connector board. Everything which is wired internally to the connectors which go to the tracker head. You'll notice on the output connector, the DC connector, there are 2 black wires and 2 yellow wires. The black wires are your ground or your 0 volt wires, and the 2 yellow wires are your 12 volt. So on this multi-pin connector, they've used 2 wires onto each crimp terminal. You've got 2 wires which go to the small DC jack, which is the fan power supply, and the other pair of wires go to the 12 volt pins on the main interface connector. You don't need to worry too much at this stage the type of connectors. You just need to identify the earth, the live and the neutral on the power connector, and the 12 volt and 0 volt connectors on the DC connector. If we go over to the actual main board now, we can see that on the chassis itself is a PCB, what's known as an open frame switch mode power supply. In order to remove this from the back plate itself, you then have to remove the other screws which hold the heatsink plate onto the rear plate. So you can see there are some slightly different size screws here which are used to hold the assembly together, so you need to remove these screws.